The Capitals should be prepared to bring their physical game against the Rangers, and Ryan Leonard makes his decision on what he wants to do next fall.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holming. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. I would love to talk Capitals hockey with you one-on-one, and we can do that on subtext. Just check the show description for more details. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and a big part of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on the classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or on Google Play. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the Capitals will need to bring their physical game against the New York Rangers. We know that the Capitals have Tom Wilson, but the Rangers have their own tough guy in Matt Rempe. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We will talk about how Ryan Leonard made his decision to go back to Boston College in the fall. And then in the last segment, we will talk about how the Capitals call up Mitchell Gibson as a depth piece in the netminding department. But just to get it going here, the excitement is starting to build as the Capitals play the first game of the playoffs against the Rangers on Sunday, and they need to be prepared to bring it. Absolutely bring it, because they are the underdogs. There's not a lot of people out there that are favoring the Capitals to win, but ultimately as a Capitals fan, that is what I like. I like the fact that they have the potential to prove a lot of different people wrong, and they're going to need to bring their physical game. I've often said the Capitals play their best hockey when they are engaged physically. You remember the game that Nick Jensen got injured and Nick Dowd, and how this whole team just bound together and they found a way to win the game. So that was a good example of that, exemplified where the Capitals play best when they're playing a physical game, and they're going to need to do that against the Rangers. What I would say is hit them hard. Hit them with the physical game, finish your checks, back checking, forechecking, and drop the mitts when you need to. Tom Wilson, you know what you need to do if the moment calls for it. And I ultimately think the moment will come as they have their tough guy, who ultimately seems like he just likes to fight. Matt Rempe, that is, not a real guy with a high skill set, I'm going to go ahead and say. The first round of the playoffs has the potential of being a very physical one. The Capitals have their tough guy in Tom Wilson. All right, not just a tough guy, but you know what I mean. There's quite a physical history between the Capitals and the Rangers, if you remember that. Now, historically, the Capitals have not fared too well against the Rangers in the postseason, but, you can't necessarily live on how this team played in the past. I think more importantly, you have to write a new future for this team. So I think the potential is there for the Capitals to win if they just play how they've played in the last few games. I think the potential is there. But talking about that physical history between the Capitals and the Rangers, or more specifically, Tom Wilson and the Rangers, most notable with Wilson versus Pavel Buchnevich, and Wilson throwing Artemi Panarin around like a rag doll. I do remember that. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but time does move quickly. My big takeaway on that is people were upset that Artemi Panarin was thrown to the ice when he was the guy, in fact, that jumped on Tom Wilson's back. So I do expect it to be chippy, but I do think that it could work in the Capitals' favor if they could bring that physicality. there's a lot of big bodies on this team. Alex Ovechkin, Tom Wilson, Beck Malenstein. He's not afraid of throwing down either. So there is physical potential there, not to mention just big guys in general. Alexei Protas is a really big guy, not necessarily a fighter. So bringing that physical game, kind of Dale Hunter-esque style hockey, I think is what would serve the Capitals well. But the Rangers, they do have their own tough guy that loves to drop the gloves at a moment's notice, sometimes prearranged in pregame skates. As I was doing research for the show, I did notice, talking about Matt Rempe, that sometimes he will find the toughest guy on the opposing team and they'll say, "You want to go?" And the other guy's like, "Sure, make a name for yourself, little boy. I'm going to take you down." And ultimately, sometimes Rempe has had his butt handed to him. Sometimes he's got the better hand, but I do think the potential is there that Tom Wilson and Rempe will go at it. But just taking a look at him, it will be no easy feat to take on someone like Rempe. He is 6'7", 241 pounds. He is a huge dude. So he has taken on some of the biggest and the best in the NHL. And like I say, sometimes you're the windshield, sometimes you're the bug. He has been both of those in a couple different cases. He is a person that shoots right, drafted 2020 by the New York Rangers, 165th overall, 6th round, 10th pick. So taking a look at him, he is a big guy, but his skill set is definitely not one that really jumps out. He definitely doesn't have the skill set that Tom Wilson has. In 17 games played on the Rangers, that is, he has 1 goal and 1 assist. And I know that's a pretty small sample size, all things considered, but he's definitely not offensive fuel, shall we say. He is a bit more of a junkyard dog. See Reeves, see Maroon, those type of player. He could grow into being something more than that. But as of right now, he is just the guy that's trying to be the muscle. He is trying to be the enforcer for the Rangers. And I think that's his role. The difference between Wilson and Rempe is, well, Wilson has a skill set that goes along with it. In 43 games with the Wolfpack, talking about Rempe here, he has 8 goals and 4 assists. So he's not necessarily lighting the world on fire with his offensive prowess, but in any event, he does serve as the deterrent for the Rangers. Now let's contrast that with Tom Wilson. Wilson has 18 goals and 17 assists in 74 games. So quite a difference, quite a disparity between those two players. But I do expect there will be a mix-up between Rempe and Wilson at least one time. My big fear is that it doesn't lead to something bigger, that, Tom Wilson gets, suspended or something like that, and that can he resist the urge to take on this guy that systematically wants to go around the NHL, taking on every team's tough guy. It's going to be a reputation that he's going to make for himself. And Tom Wilson himself, he had to kind of fight that reputation. When he first came into the league, he was kind of that guy that wanted to take on everyone, and it was detrimental to him in a large part. But he has since grown into a role where he is a legitimate goal scorer, and he is a guy that has said that I don't need to fight everyone that wants to fight me. I know that I'm best served helping my team win hockey games. I can actually score goals. Don't put me in the same category as a Reeves, as a Maroon, potentially Rempe at some point. I actually have a skill set. But it's not just that Rempe doesn't like Wilson. Actually, he admires him. Rempe doesn't have any bad feelings towards Tom Wilson. Quite the opposite, actually. He admires him. Rempe said to the New York Post's Molly Walker when asked if he watched Wilson growing up, he says, "A guy who I liked the way he plays hard, very skilled player as well. It's a guy who does a lot of different things. Obviously, I got a lot of respect for that guy. I think he's a hell of a player." And a good person to mentor yourself after or try to emulate would be a Tom Wilson. He is a guy that has found a role, signed a big contract last summer, and is that multi-dimensional player, a player that every other team in the National Hockey League would love to have if he was wearing their jersey. But talking about it, Rempe liked Wilson's game so much that he used to watch videos of Wilson fighting to kind of get himself amped up. So I do think that it's going to be an interesting situation when you do see Tom Wilson and Rempe on the ice. That can Tom Wilson resist the urge of dropping the gloves? And to a certain extent, do we want him to? I think to a certain extent, you have to kind of exude your dominance. Like you can't back away like you're scared of him. If he wants to drop the gloves at least one time in this series, I think he needs to oblige him and do it. Or to a certain extent, Wilson's reputation as being a tough guy will get tarnished a little bit. Now, listen, I don't think that will be the case. I think that Wilson at least will drop the mitts with him one time in the series. I ultimately do think that Wilson is the better fighter, and I do think it'll be fun to watch. So if you are, casually watching the game and you see those two guys getting ready to fight, you might want to stop what you're doing. I think it will be quite entertaining. Wilson has refined his game over the years, and I think Wilson would like to avoid mixing it up with him in the regard of staying out of the penalty box. Oftentimes, and you saw that with the Flyers, they were really kind of jabbing at the Capitals after the play, trying to get them into a penalty. They were trying to draw a penalty because they know that would give them the advantage, of course. So I think if the time is right, Tom Wilson can drop the mitts, but I want to avoid any extracurricular activity that doesn't fall under the purview of a fight. We don't want any high sticks. We don't want any cross checks. We don't want any blind hits, something that is going to take Tom Wilson out of the playoff picture for the long term. Physical game, yes, but do it smartly. And I know that Tom Wilson knows how to do just that. A fight could be a game changer for both teams, the Caps and the Rangers. They both play better when they play a physical game. The first little bit of hockey, it's a lot of fun, Wilson said. Guys are extremely physical. Plays are being made very fast. From there, you kind of settle in. I think hockey's one of those things, where you could play in a 70-game series. So right from the first shift, you're going to go out there. It's bumps and bruises and all that. You want to be hard on the other team. You want to take away their time and space. And let me underline part of what he just said there. You want to be hard on the other team. The physical game is of utmost importance and has been the identity of the Capitals in previous years. I wouldn't say that that's so much their identity anymore, but there was a time that the Capitals were a very big team and a team that was feared around the NHL. And I think that it serves a place on this team. And it's even before the Wilson. You think of other tough guys on this team, Erskine and players like that. Like I say, not just necessarily dropping the gloves, but finishing your checks, being hard on the forecheck, just doing the things that you need to do to soften your target. In this case, I'm talking about the New York Rangers. I think that they really need to be prepared because the Rangers, well, they're the ones with a great record, and they have a lot to prove. And the Capitals, they are the underdogs. They have a lot to prove as well. All right, so coming up here straight ahead, we will talk about Ryan Leonard's decision. I think a lot of us were hoping that he would join the Capitals in the playoffs, but he has other plans. I'll talk about those plans coming up. Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. I myself did sign up for life insurance, well, because I have children, I have a wife, and I want them to be prepared in the event that something happens to me. Policy Genius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help you walk through it. Talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the process step by step. Your work life insurance policy may not offer you enough protection for your family's needs. Policy Genius gives you unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team. So check life insurance off your to-do list with Policy Genius. Just head to policygenius.com/lockedonnhl or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonnhl. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So this isn't necessarily breaking news. This is something that happened a couple of days ago. But to be honest with you, I was caught up with the Capitals making it to the playoffs. So this is a Friday night that I'm recording it, a bonus episode. So I will talk about Ryan Leonard and his decision to go back to Boston College. It is unfortunate that he had the potential of joining the team in the postseason if he wanted to, but he chose to go back to Boston College in the fall, and that's his decision to make. You took a look at Brian McClellan in the press conference when Evgeny Kuznetsov was waived. He said that he thought he was ready to join the Capitals last fall, that he's ready to go pro whenever he wants to, but he doesn't want to push him. And Brian McClellan didn't. He said that the program at Boston College is a good one, and he can continue to keep working on his game. So kind of a sad moment for me, or a little bit let down, shall we say. The bad news is that Ryan Leonard will not be joining the Capitals next season and will play his sophomore season at Boston College. We saw what he did at Boston College. He was lights out, and it just makes it that much more exciting that you will have a truly dynamic player in years to come. I personally think it's what's best for him, just to work on his game. I think that would be putting a lot of pressure on Leonard if he just kind of jumped into the playoffs, going from NCAA to the NHL playoffs, that it would be unfair that if he didn't take to it right away, that, there would be this negative connotation kind of sent in his direction because he didn't light it up the way that we had hoped. Listen, he has really taken off at Boston College and did well at juniors. But that necessarily won't translate instantaneously when he goes to the NHL, especially the playoffs. So I think it is what is best. Ryan showed a great leadership and made tremendous progress during this year, which saw him score the most goals by a freshman in Boston College program history, and the third most goals in the NCAA. We will continue to monitor his development and progress next year and look forward to watching Ryan build upon his freshman season, writes Brian McClellan. And I think that ultimately that's all you can hope for, is that he will continue to keep working on his game. We saw how huge he was for the Eagles at Boston College. I think that if he even has more time to work on his game in an environment that is, key in developmenting or being developmental and developing players, I think that could be huge. But put it this way, I think that the back of his hockey card already, if there were college hockey cards, well, it would be quite stunning. In 41 games with the Eagles in his freshman year, he had an impressive offensive production season, scoring 31 goals and 29 assists for 60 points. He helped Boston College to the national championship, where the Eagles fell to the Denver Pioneers. They got close, and they definitely got where they were based in large part with having Leonard on the team. So a bit of a disappointing thing for me that he won't join the Capitals this season. I understand why, but that doesn't mean that I can't be disappointed. That ultimately I had hoped that he would join this team and help their pursuit of making it a deep push into the playoffs. They got through the tough part, and that's making it to the playoffs, period, something that the Capitals weren't able to do last year. I just think that in an ideal situation, in an ideal scenario, he could have joined the Capitals and really helped kind of push them over the top, because he is a guy that knows how to score goals on the regular. And we all know as Capitals fans, sometimes they can use help in that department. All right, so coming up here straight ahead, we will talk about how the Capitals called up a netminder, Mitchell Gibson. What was behind that move? I'll discuss coming up. Okay, well, yeah, I have a competitive side. We all do. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard it before. I've downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly, where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I can charge them rent on iconic properties, just like the classic Monopoly, but now I can also heist their vault of riches for myself. And the leaderboard show me the biggest Monopoly tycoon is, but it's just the competitive side that, a part of me that I love. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in on the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or on Google Play. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, talking about the net minding situation for the Capitals, we do know that it is Charlie Lindgren's net. He is the guy that rose to the surface and helped save the Capitals when Darcy Kemper was faltering. Darcy Kemper posting some of his worst numbers, statistically speaking, this season. That they have a really great number one option, they have a good number two option, and now they also have a good third option. So one of the benefits of making it to the playoffs is an expanded roster and also having what they call black aces. The Capitals have called up Mitchell Gibson from the Carolina Stingrays as an insurance policy in net, or a black ace, if you will. For those that aren't familiar with Gibson, he played his college hockey with Harvard. Gibson was the Caps' fourth round pick of the 2018 draft. This net is Lindgren's, of course, like we talked about, but you take a look at Kemper, he's faltered, that it's good that they have a good option and that their roster is big enough that they can accommodate another netminder. Good chunks of the season, you can't afford to take up a roster spot having a third netminder. So it is a good position for the Capitals to be in. But the question is, why Gibson and not Shepard or Stevenson from Hershey? It seems like a no-brainer. We take a look at Hunter Shepard and Clay Stevenson, the number one and number two in the AHL as far as netminders are concerned. Well, the simple answer is the Hershey Bears are in the playoffs and the Stingrays are not. Mitchell Gibson is a competent netminder in his own right. In Gibson's first pro year with the Stingrays this year, he posted a record 22, 14 and 3 with a .899 save percentage, a 2.56 goals against, and 3 shutouts while ranking second in the ECHL in minutes and played the fifth, and he also ranked fifth in wins. So one of the things I know about the Capitals as they have a lot of depth at the net minding department. So say for some reason this summer Lindgren got dealt, or say something crazy happens and Kemper did, they have plenty of options. Maybe not all NHL ready, but I would feel comfortable with Hunter Shepard or Clay Stevenson on the big team if something crazy happened. It does appear to me that Clay Stevenson appears to be the netminder of the future for the Capitals. He also got some time playing in Hershey, playing 2 games where he posted a 2-0-0 record with a .915 save percentage and a 1.92 goals against. So an interesting move. I don't know if ultimately we will get a good look at Mitchell Gibson on the big team, but it is that needed depth and a luxury that you have in the playoffs, that you can have some extra guys on the team. And, you never know. Crazy things have happened. If we want to take a look back at 2018, Holtby was lights out the entire season. He faltered, and Philip Grubauer had to save the day, kind of resting Braden Holtby. And then Braden Holtby came out of the bullpen and was clutch in the Stanley Cup playoffs in particular. So, not everything in life is a carbon copy or a duplicate, but sometimes it is. Something crazy could happen. Worst case scenario for the Capitals, if we want to talk about him here for a moment, is Charlie Lindgren. What if he got injured? That could be an absolute game changer if something like that happened. And Darcy Kemper was the number one. We know how he's played. The last game he played rather well. But, if I'm going to take a look at this last season in total, not his best season of hockey, so that you might need someone like a Mitchell Gibson, or, maybe if they really needed someone, they probably would call up a Clay Stevenson or Hunter Shepard. As of right now, I think Mitchell Gibson is just, that option if it's the absolute worst case scenario. So that's what it's all about. It's about planning, about worst case scenarios, and having that needed depth if you actually need it. So a good position for teams that are in the playoffs, and hopefully it doesn't have to come to that, but it's good that it is available if they in fact need it. All right, listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are ultimately what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On's 24/7 streaming channel, available on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app and on YouTube. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.